All right, well, my name is Abby Weyrather. I'm the manager at the Family Caregiver Center, and I'm really happy to welcome Lisa Paulos today. Lisa will be talking a little bit about long distance caregiving and bringing in some examples from her own experience caring for her father. Lisa's also a volunteer with the Family Caregiver Center, and she was a nurse for her career. So Lisa, go ahead.
Thanks, Abby, and welcome to Tom and other people that may be tuning in. Good morning and welcome to my front porch on this beautiful winter day. I hope the information that I have to share with you will make your long distance caregiving a little easier. I took care of my dad in Dubuque for a year and a half, and Dubuque is 90 miles from Cedar Rapids. So I wasn't that far, but yet I wasn't in the same town or right across the street. Dad eventually died of his dementia in 2019, and I'm wearing one of his favorite shirts here. I'll throw out my suggestions in no particular order. They're just things that I've gleaned over my time of taking care of him and kind of muddling through, and I hope it helps you to streamline your decisions a little bit. I grew up in Dubuque, so I had a working knowledge of the city and some of the institutions, and that helped me, but I've lived away from Dubuque longer than I lived in there, so I relied on Dad for a lot of help navigating and just with general getting around in Dubuque. The first thing I saw that was important was that I wanted to be a presence in his world. And that meant that accompanying him to places he would normally go, like the bank, to the grocery store, to his medical appointments, places that he normally went. I met his neighbors, some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. And I just wanted people to get familiar with me and connect me with him. That paid a lot of dividends farther down the line, because once you establish relationships with people, they can put a name to a face. I think they trust you better. And it was one of the first things I worked on that I was glad I did. At one point or another, you'll be dealing with most of these people, either a lot or a little, and you'll find that they become great resources. And as far as mentioning the neighbors, it's really to your benefit to get familiar with them, especially if your person has lived in the neighborhood for a long time. And maybe it's the same home that you grew up in. So you know some of those long-term neighbors. They can be your best partner, because if they know your person, many of them are long-term in the neighborhood, and they're versed in what's going on in Dubuque and how things work. You'd be surprised how often they're extremely happy to help if they just know that they're needed, and if you give them some direction. Depending on what your care receiver has as far as needing care, sometimes the neighbors don't realize what's going on, and some families are private and don't really want to share that. But always don't hesitate to tap into the neighbors. I found that they paid big dividends, and there's just no substitute for having somebody that's seconds or minutes away. I found that very comforting. And if you find people that are on board and happy to help, don't be shy about trying to reimburse them, either food or paying them, or working something out, because some of Dad's neighbors would not hear of anything like that. They just thought that's the kind of people they were. They wanted to be helpful. They were right there. It did not inconvenience them. Another younger guy really could use the money. So Greg and I worked out a schedule and a deal that when I went to Dubuque, which was usually every week or every 2 weeks, I would pay him in cash, and it was well worth the money, and he could use it. So really, it was a win-win for both of us. And we both knew that it wasn't going to be going on for years. So that's another point. What's the commitment you're asking people, and how willing are they to help? I can't say enough about my dad's neighbors. They took a lot of the burden off me, mostly the worry. You know, you don't know what's going on there, and especially if the people live right next door or across the street, all they have to do is look out their window. They don't really need to do anything except take a peek out there. So that was awesome. Another thing I found very helpful was to get online access to medical records and dad's bank statements. And that's probably going to require power of attorney. And that works hand in hand with becoming a presence with the people in your person's life. I accompanied Dad to all of his medical appointments that I could. I was working at the time, so it really took a lot of scheduling so that everybody could go, and it worked out with the care providers. I also went with Dad to his bank. Dad didn't have a computer, so he didn't have any online anything he had automatic bill payments, which was awesome. And I increased those just for one less thing to have to think about every month. But the online banking allowed me to monitor his financial situation. I did find a fraudulent debit in his checking account once that he would not have, he never even looked at his statements. His money was pretty equal as far as coming in and going out, and he just got to the point where he couldn't navigate that anymore. So he just kind of let things go as far as the incoming and the outcome coming in his checkbook. And yeah, there were things that needed attention, and that I don't consider it a function of the bankers to do that kind of personal stuff. So that benefited both of us. It allowed me to see what his financial situation was, and he was very agreeable to that. He knew that he really couldn't handle those things anymore. So that the online banking was awesome. And as well as the online medical record, you can look at things at your leisure. You know, at midnight, you can look at lab values and summaries from the care providers for your person. You're not multitasking then, although you might really wish you were going to sleep, but it gives you time to really quiet time to concentrate on what you're looking at. And I liked looking through healthcare summaries from years ago and seeing the trends in his lab values, and doing it when I had time. So that was well worth it. And I mean, it takes time and effort to get all this stuff set up, but I found it to be very helpful and a good use of my time. I also opened up a discussion with Dad about the difficult choice of entertaining a long-term care facility. We both agreed that no one wanted that, but I kept getting him to look ahead, and if something would happen to me, what would happen to him? You know, with the winter coming on, I said I could easily break my ankle, and then there would be no one coming. So he agreed that as a last resort, and if that happened, if I broke my ankle and couldn't come, it would just be temporary. And he had visited friends in long-term care facilities. He had brothers now deceased who were in long-term care facilities. He knew the ones he liked. So that saved me a lot of legwork. He was part of the decision under the agreement that it was for emergency use only and probably temporary. So he, you know, it wasn't easy to get to that point, but we did. He chose the places he liked, which were two of them. And then I contacted them, did the paperwork, and got him on the waiting list. And this was more than a year before he died. And so it's all just, your paperwork is just out there. And as people come and go in those facilities, he did rise to the top of both facilities. And I said, I had the luxury of saying, We don't really need a room now, but I want to stay at the top of the list. So if we do, then you're not scrambling and you don't have to take what's ever available at the time, which is usually not the nicest places. And sure enough, we did end up having Dad go into a facility the last 2 months of his life, which was difficult for everyone, but we had exhausted every other alternative that would work. And I had a lot of anxiety about that. And he wasn't in the facility 5 minutes and he already saw 2 people he knew. 2 friends, one was there temporarily and one was there as a resident. And it just, if they've lived in the town where they live now a long time, they are going to see people there they know. And it made things so much better. But getting them in on the decision making, every hard decision I was able to bring to Dad and we could discuss it. Sometimes it was a heated discussion, but we did discuss it and I didn't leave until we came to a resolution on what we were going to do. And all of those difficult discussions, even though they're tough at the time, you're going to be glad later on that you had them. Because another thing I found was that when you talk to your care receiver about what their plans and ideas are for the end of their life, it's much easier to be an advocate for them. Because Dad was taking an increasing amount of medication every day, and he had a pretty good system. I let him be in charge of that. But he said to me once that he wanted to take less medicine. That's what he wanted. So when we went to his doctor one time, because they go to the doctor, the appointment lasts 5 or 10 minutes, everything is fine and that's it. But I said, Dad wants to be on fewer medications. So I want to look through the list and decide what can be eliminated. He was 82, he had dementia. He didn't need to be on 3 blood pressure medications. He was taking something for cholesterol. He had 2 eye drops and a pill for his eyes. We pared that down, but you have to be firm. And because I knew that's what Dad wanted, that was easy for me. And sure enough, we got him down to 3 things every day. And it's worth the effort, but you have to be firm, especially with medical providers. And it's a lot easier if you know what your person wants. You're not strong arming the situation because you're doing what they want. And really, I saw that as part of my job and something that I wanted to do for Dad. Also, Dad was very proactive about having an account at a local funeral home. That was awesome. And those are things that typically don't come up just in regular conversation when you go to visit or you're talking on the phone. He had an account there. He had more than enough money in there. I met the funeral home director. Dad and I went to talk to the funeral home director. It was awesome. And even Dad brought up the fact that he wanted to donate his body to the University of Iowa, which was like, oh my Dad, that is the most awesome thing ever. And it wasn't to save money. He already had enough in his account, but I would never have thought he would have decided that. But he did, and who knows that stuff unless you start having those conversations. And you'd be surprised, once you open the door to some of those conversations, all kinds of information comes out. And for me, the conversations became pleasant and interesting and really helpful. So it's cracking the door, I think, that really is the hard part, but I can say it's worth it now. It's easy now that I've done it all, but just try to do your best. Another thing I'll bring up is you have to weigh the pros and cons of getting agency help or any kind of outside help for your family that needs extra services. I mean, sometimes there's other people in the home with the care receiver, but they already have enough on their plate. They can't handle anymore. So, since Dad didn't have a computer and I didn't have a smartphone, all this kind of came crashing down on short notice. I got out the phone book and I started calling people, care agencies, and I got lucky and we got the best person for him ever, Martha, who I still send her cards and get her gifts. She was the glue that made it all happen. But we could have gotten someone that wouldn't have been the best fit. And sometimes there were fill-ins for Martha who they weren't her, but so somebody had to step in there and do some things, and ended up getting some Meals on Wheels. And it's a lot of calling and a lot of time, but I think it's what you do for the people in your life that need care. And another thing that is the most awesome is that even though you're all stressed out and you're trying to hit this moving target all the time, you end up meeting people who are they're the most wonderful people in your life that you never would have met if you weren't on this path of taking care of a person. There are the most wonderful, helpful people out there that you wouldn't cross paths with. But because now you're on this caregiving journey, you're just opened up to a whole world of people. And wow, it just gives you hope that there are great people in the world, because now they're in your world and they're helping you. Another thing that's easier said than done is thinking outside the box. And I did that when it came to Dad's phone. He had a flip phone and he used it okay, but he would handle it in his pocket and sometimes he would turn off the ringer and he wouldn't know that. And so I would call, no answer. I would call the neighbor, Greg, can you run down to Dad's, look at his phone? Sure enough, the ringer was off. Well, I ended up reinstalling a landline. And the guy at the phone company says, oh my gosh, we never do that. We just take them out. But that way, that was the emergency phone. And it rang really loud. It was an old-fashioned desk phone. And so if Dad's phone, one time it was charging, or he just think normal things people do, but then you start to worry and you're far away. So we got the landline in, and that was awesome. And we got his old phone number from when I was a kid. So it's not that he had to remember the phone number. I mean, he never called it, but it was easy for me to remember. So that was fun. You really try to think outside the box, because it benefits you, but it's doing so much thinking already that's not always coming to mind. And then speaking of box, I'll show you my file box. This is my accordion file that, oh my gosh, it's something that don't skimp when you first buy one, because I ended up getting a second box. I had so much stuff, and all these little tabs in here. They're like Dupaco Credit Union, household bills, legal, taxes, Social Security, investments, deeded body, three-way phone call for when I would call my sisters. All those tabs just fill in with stuff, and no matter where I went, I carried this file box with me. It was always with me when I went to Dubuque. It was always at my fingertips when I was at home. It's hard to keep everything straight, and I'm not the most organized person, but I still haven't emptied it. I'm still getting mail for Dad and that kind of stuff, but it was my security. And lastly, I'll just tell you what you already know, that managing someone else's life is difficult and time consuming, and it's a moving target. You just get things to where everything's good, and a month, a week later, things change and you're solving the same problems again from a different vantage point. But ask for help. You'd be amazed at the people who are willing to help you. You just have to find them. They don't usually come to you, unfortunately. And that's why the Family Caregiver Center of Mercy is so awesome. They have resources, they have time, they have experience, they'll help you. So really tap into every helpful resource you can, and just do the best you can for the people you love. We hope that when we're the people who need care, that there's someone like us waiting in the wings, but who's to know what's in the future? Good luck and thanks for tuning in.